Tony.
Let's do it, buddy.
Okay, great. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is yet another Tuesdays with Tony in our series called Designing Your Life. Today's session is working as a high-performing team. For those that don't know, Tony is a longtime executive coach that I and several others have been able to enjoy. He's author of 60-something books. If you were to kind of nail it down, he is kind of the go-to strategist for sure. But just because I use the word strategist doesn't mean it's just kind of long-term. Everything that he says and does and touches results in fantastic, impactful, short-term kind of to-dos, for lack of better words, that makes you and your team better. So, Tony, all yours.
Thanks, buddy. So here we are on March 2nd, and we are going to dig in, as Randy said, to high-performing teams. Randy, I don't know if you heard how I got into this high-performing team area. I was working with the president of Ford 25 years ago, and they asked me to do an assignment on taking their top 200 people in one of their areas to really build them into a high-performing team. And I told them that I didn't really have that kind of expertise, and they said, well, we'll give you $1 million. And I said, well, I think I'll become an expert. And, I went out. And, yeah, Tucker, it made an impact on me. I went out and hired a lot of really great people on high-performing teams, and learned a lot of what I'm going to share in our experience here today. So we want to zero in on, of course, as always, to impact thinking. We want to share distinctive characteristics of a high-performing team. And in fact, we want to talk about the specifics of building them. The way that we got the agenda built up today is we're going to talk about why a high-performing team, why team synergy. And then we dissected it, Randy, into a model that we talk about a group, team, or high-performing team. And we'll talk about kind of like where you are today in each of those levels and how do you get to that highest level. And it's a really simple and great model. Let me encourage everybody to take a picture on some of the slides when they pop up. We also developed a model called ACT, and ACT stands for the three major words: accountability, communication, and trust. And we're going to unpack those three words as it relates to bringing everybody to a high-performing team. And then we put a couple of hand quotes from the book that we thought would be interesting, and then we'll wrap with the VIPs. So that's kind of our setup. Payoff-wise, obviously, we always want to increase alignment with our teams. So whether you run a team, part of a team, whether your team is even your family team, we want to ensure change initiatives work better as a result of having that alignment. And of course, I think at the core of any culture, a business culture, you can have high-performing teaming. So why synergize? That's the first part. Collective intelligence. One of the things I'd propose is that inside any organization, whether it's 3 people, 30 people, 300 people, 3,000, you have a lot of intelligence, and the better your leverage, the more your collective intelligence and expertise comes to the table. Anybody want to comment on that one? It's to the top.
Yeah, I mean, from what I see, just everybody just kind of leveraging best practices from those that have kind of been there, done it before.
Expands, number 2, expands leadership. One of the things, Randy, that we constantly are encouraging people to do is to bring people up. A lot of people don't do that as intentionally as they could. And we think with team synergy, you lift people up, building your bench strength. Number 3, supports training. Obviously, everybody wants to be the best they can be, and encouraging individual initiative. So people aren't just sitting back and waiting on others, but they are like out there doing it. Engagement. You can look at all the different ways you want, but engagement's a big deal when you think about, is a culture working right? And when you have team synergy, you have engagement, passion, and then execution. Bottom line about what I'm all about is getting results. Rick, Tucker, anybody want to make a comment on those 5 areas? Leadership, bench strength.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with bench strength in particular, it's, being able to leverage that institutional knowledge within an organization, being able to go and ask questions to the folks who have been there before and, have been in similar situations that you have. And, it might not necessarily be something that's in your playbook or something that, you practice as a standard sort of, sales procedure or methodology, but being able to take, unique situations and talk to folks internally about, ways they've been able to overcome certain obstacles, really, not only allows you to learn more, but with the folks that you're talking to, sort of expands their own leadership capabilities as well, being able to pass that down.
Rick, what do you think, buddy?
I got a little bit of Simon Sinek on the brain because I'm about 2 hours left in his first book, Start With Why. So, he starts off the book with everyone. There are leaders and there are those who lead. That's pretty much where he starts the book. So I have a feeling that that's going to be a consistent theme throughout today's
Trading.
presentation by you, Tony. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt. Randy, any comments before we dig in? So here's the,
Yeah, just the whole engagement side, right? Especially now, I think with Zoom, engagement's probably, more important than ever, for sure.
and that brings up the subject I think we need to kind of thin throughout the entire training today. Randy, when we were rehearsing and thinking through all the pieces, hey, Anu, we were thinking about all the different ways that team synergy is impacted today by flat screen, not just by being in person. In the model that we wrote about in the book that we developed back years ago, it simply says this, that everybody can simply ask yourself, when you define, if you will, at what level you're playing, there's 3 different levels. Level 1's a group, level 2 is a team, and level 3 is a high-performing team. And so maybe we could talk about each one of those. Let me define them first, though. A group, in this next slide, kind of spelling it out, is a set of people that are together with no real common goal or no common task. However, each person or department is executing specifically and independently, and when you add it all up, it can still be a profitable enterprise. So a lot of organizations operate at the group level, make things happen, but they aren't really synergized. The next level in our model we're introducing today is a team, and that's a group of people working together for a common goal that acts more interdependent with each other. So there's more connection. That's mid-level. And then at level number 3, the highest level, is at the high-performing team level. And we were defining a high-performing team as a team that focuses on being as effective as possible while continually evaluating their correction of errors. COEs came from me working with the president of Walmart, and I understood working with them that they constantly felt like they'd have better teamwork if they helped each other correct their own errors. So they have a whole philosophy that I have really come to admire, where people are reevaluating correction of errors, always making things better, better standards, and helping each team member be better. Each team member in a high-performing team has a high level of investment themselves. They're into it, and they're individually motivated. That means that their leader doesn't have to always push them. They do stuff on their own. So when you think about it, and let me bring it all back together, you kind of have 3 levels in this model. And I'd really like to open it up for discussion on these 3 levels. Where have you played before? Where are you playing now? Who'd like to start?
I'd like to just make a comment, Tony. I never worked at Bridgewater Associates, but I know people that have. And when you say correction of errors, is that, if anybody's familiar with Bridgewater Associates, Ray Dalio, is that how they acted with the self-enforcement and calling each other out and that sort of thing? Is that what you mean by correction of errors, or is it something different than that?
The COEs that I got came from Walmart, and how it hit me hard was I was at a Saturday morning meeting with some of the Sam's managers, and a guy stood up, one of the Sam's managers, and said he figured out how to correct an error in the way that they mop their floors and could save at that time $1,700 a year on mopping floors in a store. And I was like, $1,700, and he got a standing ovation, Rick. And I was like, standing ovation for $1,700? And at that time, they were $30 billion in revenue. And what I came to realize was that they really meant it as a high-performing team. They constantly were correcting errors and getting better. And that was part of their culture, And Walmart, I don't know if you know it or not, Rick, but they have a system in their 4,000-something stores in the U.S. Each day, a 24-hour store will have 3 different meetings. And they meet for 7 to 10 minutes, and they kind of do a start to work meeting of each 8-hour shift. And they're constantly talking about what are the correction of errors that they need to improve. And I think when you do that, that's a sign of a high performing team.
Do we live in a culture, Tony, where people are afraid to correct others and people are afraid to be corrected? Sometimes it feels that way to me.
Agree, Rick. Agree. You know, do you really want to admit when you're flawed, when you made a mistake? You know, and I think that's true generally, as you say, in the whole world today. You know, do you admit it personally? Randy, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say we get maybe some other people engaged here.
Yeah. Hey, Tony, I have a question. In the three groups, this is Rob Schaefer. In the three groups of group, team, and high performance team, do you have a kind of an idea of what percentage of companies or teams fall into each one of those categories?
You know, that's a great question. I don't. Anybody want to throw a number out? Like, do you think about all the companies that you've been part of? And, you know, is it a third and third and a third? Is it most people are in the group deal? Is it a few, just a few, 10% make it to that real high performing team?
So
Anu, what do you, go ahead. Rob, go ahead.
do you consider your team a high performing team before the results or after? My point is kind of the chicken and the egg, right? All of a sudden you have, if you're a sales leader and you have great numbers and you start to call yourself a high performing team, doesn't mean you are, based on some of the definitions you have here. You know, my impression is you got to be a high performing team before you get results. But a lot of times, the way we throw around the term, it's after the results have been seen or earned, and now all of a sudden you're considered a high performing team, right? It's you got to get to it way before the results. If it's a sales team, for example, way before your results and your growth and all that, right? You got to have the high performing team characteristics. And one of the things you mentioned on the slide earlier, this is Joel Kimball, by the way, was if you could go back about the individual. I found that interesting.
Which one, Joe?
Your definition of a high performing team.
All right, let me go back just 1 second.
Yeah, you said something that I caught, individually motivated. So, and in the discussion was, it's a bunch of individually motivated people. You don't necessarily have to lead every day because they're so motivated and they're so clued into what the vision is or what the goal is, that as a leader, if you have that high performing team, your job gets a little bit easier at this point, right? Because everybody's on the same page, everybody's chasing the individual goals, but also team goals. And so again, where do we define a high performing team? Before the results or after the results, right? And I think we have a habit of saying, well, look at the results, that's a high performing team. And you know, that's just not the way to look at it, I don't think.
2 points, Joe. I think you can get results at level 1 or level 2. I think level 3 high performing team is a force multiplier and you get better results. And to your point, individually.
And Tony, don't you think, and over time?
What's that?
I said, and don't you think over time, add to what you said over time, right? So you'll consistently have higher force multiplier. It won't be a point in time or any given quarter or any given year, but rather over a longer horizon of time.
I'll buy that. Whoever said that.
That's Rob Schaefer. Because
When
I think that the notion that I would add to the correcting of errors is one of the characteristics of a high performing team is one that is comfortable being uncomfortable in their vulnerability, right? So you have to put yourself aside and you have to be in it for the success. And I'm absolutely in agreement with Joel that you have to define the characteristics and the definition of high performing, right? And results come in a lot of different ways. So if you build out the characteristics of the team, saying that this is our definition of high performance, those results will naturally come. They'll come at a higher level and for a longer period of time.
Love it all.
So, Tony, I'm thinking of something that Randy mentioned in Peter Quirk's presentation last week about that particular individual who may not be hitting the numbers or achieving what is expected quota-wise, but is behaving properly, and to be able to separate that person and put that person in a position to succeed. And sometimes I think that was to Joel's point and to Rob's point, that if you're just judging the results, maybe those results are a fluke, or maybe, we don't really know how we got to those results, and that maybe a high-performing team needs to be put together. And so that when we're confident about how that team was put together and why that team was put together, again, Simon Sinek, then when those results are hit, we're more confident that that really is a high-performing team and it wasn't fluky.
Sounds good to me, Rick. I'm about to share with you a definition or distinctions, 3 different distinctions that I think really sum up 3 major components of a high-performing team. Before I do that, though, on the individually motivated, let's have some discussion for a minute on this, Randy. Do you believe that the more people are individually motivated, the more you can lead them versus have to manage them? What do you guys think about that?
I'd say the same thing, maybe differently, which is if each individual knows how they play in the kind of the sum of the parts, so to speak, then absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Earlier points in terms of how then they help each other leverage best practice, so they've got their end goal as a team that they're focused in, knowing, hey, here's how can I play in that piece of it.
Agree, 100%.
The
Anybody
other
else?
challenge, though, is always the dynamic nature of these teams. Like, you think you have a high-performing team, you've got it all lined up, you've got people individually motivated, then all of a sudden your team's changing. You're adding new players, you're removing players, people are moving on to other roles within the company, you're leaving the company. So it's a moment in time. It doesn't last for very long. You're constantly having to. It's always a goal, but it's never steady.
Life is always changing, right, Anu?
Yeah.
Okay, let me keep going. Okay, so I think we would generally say, and I think everybody would agree that's on with us today, that being part of or leading a high-performing team is better than a team or a group, right? So we want to be able to get to that level. How do you get that level, and what's the real definition? So of all the things that we've studied, we came up with a set of 3 things I want to go over. When we were discussing yesterday these 3 things, we said apply them to kind of what's happening with COVID, because with COVID, you're not in the same room with people the same as we were maybe 2 years ago. Anybody want to comment on that? How do you really keep that connectivity going when a lot of your connectivity is on the phone, flat screen, Zoom? Right?
So Tony, I'm really glad you're addressing this, because one of the questions I have for the group is, have we as leaders, have we as managers allowed COVID and the length of the COVID time to leak into how we look at that idea of high performing teams and redefining what performance looks like? So is it now giving ourselves excuses, either individually or team, not to be performing at our highest level because we have external macroeconomic conditions that we may or may not be able to control? We don't get to see face-to-face, and as we all know that things change when you're face-to-face in terms of how we communicate and what level of expectations. And I would really love to have some feedback on this area, because I'm trying to hold accountable to high standards. And if I go back to your last slide, my team is in between team and understanding what the definition of high performance team is, so that we are in fact holding each other accountable, correcting the mistakes and getting better, having better standards and having more accountability, not less accountability. And there's days I think we're on the right track and days we're definitely on the wrong track.
Let me comment and then we'll open it up. So I do want to have some good discussion on this. So I believe that if you're really a master at facilitating on a flat screen, then you can really have a lot better chance of having that high performing team synergy from flat screen. And I think it takes a real set of skills to bring that out to where people are sharing, people are winning, and people are connecting. And certainly you can do that in person. And, you know, we've worked with many companies over the last 12 months, and some you got hundreds of people on the line, and you're able to, when we're able to really pull that out where people are sharing and being inspiring and winning, then I believe that really promotes that high performing team setup that's desired, that's different now than when you're in person. Who wants to add to that?
Are you saying, Tony, that we need to do a better job of embracing the flat screen?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, I say the subset of that, Rick, is you got to be a master at engagement, at facilitation. So a lot of times people present and they talk. And one of the things we attempt to do here, Randy and I, in our preparation, same with Tucker and Eloise, is we look for what are the questions that we can ask so we have that engagement. And I believe that that's part of what we want to do with the sales community under Randy's leadership. It's not just Tony's on the line or someone else is on the line that's written some kind of cool concept and they're blabbing it to everybody. It's really, you've got engagement, Rick, and I think it's a big deal. I think it's a giant deal to be able to facilitate one flat screen.
You know, light bulb just went off in my head when we get back to more in-person visits and people are accepting that maybe you can almost use this sort of meeting for 15 or 20 minutes to set up a good sales call agenda. So rather than pass back email, is to get everybody on the page, go around the room and get that kind of collaboration that really strengthens that face-to-face meeting. So that kind of an aha moment for me.
Any other comments before we dig in?
Yeah, this is Kristen Carey.
Go ahead, Kristen.
I would say most of my top guys have found better production with COVID just because they would prefer to be working at home anyway. They didn't like the distractions, especially my number one person. He didn't like the office chat. I mean, he was a little bit of an extreme with that, but it also has had us rely quite a bit on a system of record and making sure that those updates are made to Salesforce and that we're reviewing that. And the meetings are not as long as well, because a lot of times you're having interpersonal conversation in addition during your one-on-ones. But I think overall people are more productive, and especially with the commute time, a lot of people had to take the train into the city and they don't have to do that now. So it's helped us.
Thank you. Who else? All right. Check this out.
This is Joel Kimball again. I guess your point about the facilitation and having the right skills to do that. I think that one of the problems, like just reflecting, is we don't hire. We don't hire to that. We don't hire to flat screen skills. If you have an organization that you've built, you've probably hired to a lot of different other skills and characteristics, and probably not flat screen skills. So it's a great point. I know it's probably what the world is struggling with now. Managers are struggling with how to lead when you can't have that personal touch or that personal conversation face to face, either with a client or with a team member. It's a huge, in my opinion, it's a huge gap on where we are today. Now, I think we all started this saying, well, why did we didn't have to hire to this? Because this is only going to last 6 months. Well, this could be another two years, right? So it's a great, I think that's a whole, that whole facilitation of a high performance team on a flat screen is a whole nother course or class that some guy smarter than me could put together, and there'd be a lot of people that would join in on that. I think everybody's struggling with that.
I do 100% agree. And here's what I think. It's almost a new game where you might have been a master prior to COVID, and now it's you may be an apprentice, and you're sitting there searching for all the different skills to be able to most effectively manage and lead when you're not seeing your people. Maybe you hadn't seen your people in how long? A year,
right?
You know, and then you don't even have annual events where you get together, even in annual events. You know. Anyway, I'm glad to have the spike interest in this, Randy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll put a plug sales community. So if you go on the sales community site, for those that are members, if you go into the discovery area under remote selling, or you just type in remote selling, there's a whole bunch of really good ideas and best practices that come up that could be of value.
Dig it.
I find the toughest part of this, it goes back to new people on the team, trying to build that relationship with the new people, trying to provide the coaching with them, trying to do joint calls with them to get out to the client and be able to share information. Really, really tough to do with people that are new to the company.
Here's a model called ACT that I introduced at the beginning of our session today: accountability, communication, and trust. You can slice high-performing teams into lots of different ways. What we did at the time, based on the research that we were doing, those are 3 good categories to become excellent at. And I'd like to walk you through some of the distinctions in each one, and again, continue our great discussions on it. Accountability. In a high-performing team, people do what they say they're going to do. They do it on time and before. And what happens is that's not always possible. And when it's not possible, then number 2, when time commitments can't be met, are they renegotiated ahead of time? Or you falling behind and going, wow, that person didn't tell me and they missed a deadline and made me look bad. And all of a sudden, everybody's like wig. And then the third one I put in here for accountability is everybody's agreed upon measurable results. And is there a consistent output, and is there a consistent review of those results? So I think accountability is a giant component to a high-performing team. So let's open it up for discussion. Who's next? Who's first? Do you guys agree? Not agree?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of different sayings over the years, but kind of say do is, probably, I don't know, they got invented probably long before we were on Earth, but that's, kind of first and foremost, work and family and friends.
That got me thinking about Coach Bill Parcells of the Giants. If anybody ever said they try, he say try. There's no try.
Right. Get it done. Yep.
So does everybody agree that accountability is a big deal? Like if you have people that do what they say they're going to do, they do it on time and follow through, man, it just connects you, right? And there's a real disconnect if people don't. It falls into the third and trust, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
Well, I'll go one
Okay.
better. I think that people on this call, I know that I'm having a good day when somebody's actually pushing me, and I'm not doing all the pushing. Somebody kind of beats me to the punch on something, or maybe I got into email hell and someone calls and says, hey, listen, Rick, we got to get out of this email hell. And I'm like, wow, I'm usually the one getting out of email hell. So thank you for that. And I'm attracted to that person because there's an accountability there, which also falls into the communication part, obviously.
Yep.
I think just Tony, like ACT is just the beginning. I think it's, accountability, communication, trust, but it's more importantly, a lot of other measurements that measure progress and people's development. People that act responsible, right? That accept responsibility, they take action, they're proactive, they're coachable. And especially in COVID more than ever, people can get lazy and they don't have an executive presence, which they need to, right? Especially if you're the face of the product of the company, even if it's through Zoom. Some of the other characteristics that I think a lot of us try to find, it's really hard to recruit in this environment, and then enable these people thinking that you can find some of these other traits, like, are they a team player? Are they passionate? Do they have good communication skills, like part of your ACT? And are they really bringing like the simple things like seeking closure and next steps in all their conversations? Because in sales, some people just get lazy and they just don't put themselves in very uncomfortable situations, which I think somebody brought up earlier in the discussion. So I think ACT is just the beginning.
Agreed.
Especially
and
when
I think a lot of things can fit in these 3 words, and it's not everything. It's 3 buckets that we want to be exceptional at. When you have a team and there's 3 people, 30 people, what size team do you work with, Sean?
My team's about 34 people in the US. Overseas are probably about 10, but 125 in the company.
And is the mission of the company really clear?
Very clear. We have 3 very, very clear company goals this year.
And do you have good tools where people are constantly communicated through or with, whether it be Zoom or video?
Yeah, I mean, we got all the technology, even Slack, which I hate. But yeah, we got them all when it comes to the technology piece.
And are people encouraged?
Are they encouraged? I think they're more,
Well, like, for example, are people appreciated? Are they thanked? Are they complimented? Like, those are things that are subsets of encouragement that is a part of a communication that a lot of organizations just don't do to the level they could. I'm not picking on you. I'm just asking for, comments.
So I think the best line of communication for, because look, at the end of the day, I don't think we ask ourselves enough of this. It's like, how are you doing? It's been a year in this environment. Like, how about asking that question in a one-on-one, or just like, how are you doing? How's your parents? How's your wife? How's your kids? How's your family? How are you doing? You don't, that maybe they don't have a family. Maybe they don't, this can really get on people. So it's like those one-on-ones are like the number one way to kind of see the pulse of the team. Because in front of everybody on the team, then no one's going to really kind of come out like that, right? So, or just at least.
I just wrote that down. I need to be more cognizant, right? That's great, right? Because we've been in this for a year, all of us, the world has.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I don't take that extra little 90 seconds and ask that exact question. That's a great one, guys. I love it.
Yeah, but when it comes to like, just a kind of a global, it's tough because our team is all over the world. And, but for the US team, we do town halls every week. And just to like, just appreciate some of our small successes, whether it's a small one or a large one, maybe a net new logo, maybe a new promotion within the team, maybe a quarterly business review we have, because I oversee sales, customer success, operations, marketing. I oversee it all. Maybe new hires, little things like that. I think just continue to encourage the team. But on one-on-ones, I highly suggest with my directors, I have 5 of them. I want to know where they want to be in the next year, like, and how can I enable them to get there, right? So, and then my expectations for them is to do the same thing with their teams. So people always feel like they have a path through COVID and getting back to an office where they can actually enjoy each other's company, right? I actually planned 3 trips this year with the team already. Whether we go or we don't, doesn't really matter. As long as they know that it's booked, and they have something to look forward to. So that's just a lot that I just gave you, but that's kind of some of the things we're doing.
Good stuff, buddy. Appreciate your contribution. Item number 4 on the screen is meetings. And I think one of the ways that, if you take the 2 biggest ways we communicate today, one is email and one's meetings. If you take the subset of meetings, probably it's Zoom now more than ever, of course. Are they outlined? Do you have good objectives? Do you have a good agenda? Are they efficient? Are they inspiring? Right? If you have a high performing team, I propose that meetings are inspiring. They are effective. They are efficient. Anybody want to comment on that 5th one? I mean, the 4th one?
Yeah, I think somebody said earlier on, kind of if you have the agenda laid out beforehand, that means there's prep work. So you're just not showing up winging it. Then you could check in with everybody to make sure is there anything else that they want to get done. And it makes sure if it's your meeting, you get done with everything that you want to get done. And then it also allows you, depending upon how many people are in there, that you can then call out specific people to then cover specific things. So that way, then it's harder for somebody to kind of, just be quiet and just be an innocent bystander.
Anybody else? We're going to go to T for trust. Here we go. It's going to click up there. Oh, no, I had one more communication I added yesterday. We talked about this. I'm sorry, I forgot that. Creating a tool called a standards card. One of the things that I communicated for a long time is the idea that a lot of organizations don't have clear standards. Like, what's your communication standards? Is it that you will respond to an email in a certain amount of time? Is it that you'll be efficient with an email, not write a book, but you'll write bullets? Is it you leverage the subject line? Like, what's the standards? Anybody have any communication standards that you work with in your organization? Or comments on the concept? What's the expectations when someone joins your team and how you communicate? Is it efficient? Is it fast? Is it collaborative?
Maybe you give some examples.
A lot of people have inefficient email inside an organization. And I say one of the biggest reasons that you do is because people have never trained on email, and yet that's one of the biggest ways we communicate today. And when you think about email, Randy, in itself, why would you not have standards of how to operate? Like, do you leverage a subject line? Do you front load an email? Like, a great standard is a front load email. If you put like this, you have to wallow through like 19 paragraphs of an email, and people do that all the time. It's a lot of waste. And if you have a standard that says front load it with whatever the key ask is, the key actions, the key information, and then more detail later, that is a communication standard. A lot of people never have standards. They never have training on email, and therefore it's inefficient. And I say that that impacts the morale and the kind of the synergy of a high performing team.
I would say one of my pet peeves, and I try and instill this, is if this is back when we were in the office, but don't send an email back and forth. I've seen two people emailing back and forth about something, and I'm like, just go over and talk to them about it. It's quicker, it's more efficient. And then also having specific actions outlined after a meeting, and that holds the sales rep accountable for, we revisit that when we go back to follow up on what should have been done.
So a standard could be that every meeting has a set of actions at the end, and you review it. That could be a standard, and a lot of companies believe in it, do it some, but it's maybe not a written standard. Anyway, what I was proposing in this,
maybe it could be as simple as asking a question of an individual. How do you like to be communicated to? We talked about the platinum rule. So I've got this client, and I've got this sit stand desk, and I was making notes on, it's a whiteboard, it's a glass board. And he's a pretty progressive guy. So I figured, wait a minute, do I really need to retype that in an email as a recap? Or can I just take a photograph of what I wrote? And I sent it to him, and I said, Jeff, is this chicken scratch? Can you see it? And I'm looking for a response from him. Because if he agrees to that, that certainly is very efficient for me. He may appreciate that, or he may say, I can't read it. Can you send me an email? But it's a tester for me. Now, that's just a one-on-one thing. That's not a company-wide standard. But if you don't try different things, then you're going to get stuck in email hell and so on and so forth. I was thinking about what Kristen was saying also about, or what you said about the morale, is now that we do a lot more flat screening and we're not in offices, you wonder if email or the lack of communications therein are bringing morale down. It almost reminds me of what it was like in the 80s and 90s. You had to have good lighting. You had to have a clean bathroom, and the coffee pot had to be clean. I'm really dating myself, but those little things really do make a difference, but those things really don't exist anymore. So little things like email, or maybe even calling somebody and say, hey, listen, I want to recap this. How would you like to see it? You want me to text it to you, email it? Would you like to set 5 minutes aside and we can debrief the call that way instead? I can handle anyway, but it's really important about how the person wants to receive it.
I want to show you guys something, Rick. You just triggered something. Have you guys seen this book? We're going to put it on the.
I haven't.
I have.
Have you guys seen that one?
We've got to start meeting.
One of the things that we talk about in this of the 20 practices is to have a set of standards for your communication, one for emails and one for meetings. I won't keep like driving that too hard, but I just really believe in standards. What's your deal? If you expect someone to do something, and write it down and let people know the expectations. If they join your team and they go, this is the way it is, then they go, that's the way it is, instead of having them have months and months and months of figuring out the way it is, All right, let's go over to trust for a minute. Item number 3 of the ACT model is trust. And we got 4 pieces there. People follow through, like, if people do stuff, put the X's in the boxes. Individual expertise is valued and respected. Team members are empowered, and expectations are managed carefully. Trust, is that a big deal to you guys? What do you think? How big a deal is it? It's a better question.
Well, now more than ever.
Why, Sean?
Well, it's one of those things that it takes, first of all, if you have never worked with a person before and you start working with them now and you start building that trust, it's harder to do it remotely than if you were with that person ever. And then I think it's harder now to build it. And then once it's lost, it's gone. Like, I don't think you can get it back. And you don't want to have people in your organization you can't trust, especially now since, we're trying to find, owners of their business and not operators, like people that are very self-motivated in this environment. So that's why.
I put some examples on this next slide, Sean. I'm going to click to it and I want to look at the bottom one first. So look at trust here to what you said. If you shoot somebody in front of the whole team, do you kill trust? If you talk behind people's backs, do you kill trust? Like, we got to be thinking about all these little components. If we really believe accountability, communication, and trust are three great things to work on, accountability. What happens when you start a meeting and no one shows up on time? If there's no agenda, if there's no objective, right? Communication, making sure that everybody understands the vision, is clear on the distinction. Continuing communication is happening. The clear actions. When you have a meeting, do you go back and look at the previous meeting and say, here's what the actions were? Or do you just keep going? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, the accountability and communication are really what trust is built upon, right? So, you had mentioned before, objectives, agenda, if the communication is there and, you're holding people accountable, that's where the trust factor comes in. But if you have pieces broken in those first two on accountability and communication, you're not even going to make it to the trust piece of it all.
Love it, Tucker. Love it. Randy, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say kind of tongue in cheek, but you said if you shoot somebody publicly, that could be bad. I've been in a situation where it's good, where you have people that have been kind of bad behavior for a long time and nobody's really hold them accountable. So selectively, not all the time, but selectively with some people, it's good. And you can actually build credibility, especially as a new leader, doing that to some of the inappropriate behavior people on the team.
Bingo. Good distinction. Excellent distinction. Excellent. Go ahead and talk in a while. Anu, Christy, who's there? Joel. Any comments on these three?
I agree with Tucker. You're not going to get to trust unless you do the first two. And I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm a little old fashioned, but the trust also comes in on when one of the guys was talking about, getting to know your people, getting to know them and their way of life and their families or what their hobbies are, whatever. All that goes into building trust and a connection, right? Not just a meeting agenda and being on time and all that stuff. That's all the business side of it. But there's a personal side of, in my opinion, there's a personal side of trust as well, right? And if you can make that connection, you can probably wade through even some other things in the trust area that maybe you're not, that maybe you didn't, as a leader, you didn't execute well with that individual or that team, right? So I think, there's that personal connection there that it really is important to building trust, right? Versus just the corporate structure of meetings and communications and whatnot.
Sold. Personal communication, personal connection. Here's some quotes for you guys. We're moving into the last quarter of our hour. Here we go. See what you think about these. I've got 3 or 4 of them. See if you like them. And I got a funny video to bring your energy up. Everybody want to see a funny video? Everybody say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Team breaker, unforgiving. Team maker, what? How about this one? Next one. Team breaker, indecision. Team maker, action. Next one. When you stop to think, don't forget to start again.
That's always important.
Sean, I didn't get you to laugh. Not even a smile. I got Rick to laugh. All right, here we go. Check this out. I got a little video I'm going to show you. Keep promises sparingly and keep them faithfully. We got to be careful with what we say so we can deliver. And did we have that video? We're going to show the video? Okay, I thought we had a video in. Oh no, before I do that, I want to talk about one exercise. Yeah, one more first, and then I'll do the video. The video is only 42 seconds, and it's a killer video. All right, how about this one? When you're working with your team, this is an exercise I've used. And I don't think I've really ever done it electronically, but when you're in person, if you take a card and you put each person's name on it, so let's say there's 6 of you, and you write each person's name on a card, and then you pass the card around. And when the person gets the next card, you write down 2 or 3 of their best characteristics. And then you keep passing the card around. And pretty soon there's 15 words on that person's card. And then you have the person turn the card over upside down and hand it back to the owner. The owner writes down 3 words they hope are on the other side. Then they look at it. And then they see how well they like what they heard. And then they talk about those distinctions. That can be a really powerful team building exercise that can happen in just minutes. And I would encourage you even to do it with your family. Like if you got adult kids or teenage kids that can do that, just do it on a napkin or do it on a card. It's really powerful for a team exercise. Anybody ever done it? You have, Rick? Nope.
No, I never really did. I took a picture of the slide though.
It's a great one. It's a good one. Okay, here's my setup for this video. Randy, are they going to laugh when I show this?
They better.
Okay, here we go. Thanks, guys. Here we go. Let's check it out. Daniel, if you can help us play it.
Oh, you're not just gonna walk away and give up.
Stuck.
You can get that. That's yours. Nobody else. Get in there and give it some heat. Give it some heat. Get it some heat. Get in there and you get it. You go in there, baby, and you go get it hard. You get it. You get it. Get it. That's the one right there. You get it. Yes. All right. Yeah, baby.
Now I got the energy out. Thank you guys for laughing. I got Sean smiling out. Cheering works. So as I'm kind of moving into my close today, you know, are you cheering people on around you? Like this whole team thing kind of applies to your family team as well. Are you cheering them on? So I got the highlight slide. I'll let you guys absorb it as we're talking. And let's just let everybody that wants to maybe just share a quick 30 seconds. What's the one thing that you're really taking away from our last 45, 50-minute experience? And the one thing I'm going to tell you that I'm taking away is the whole idea about leading and talking about how you doing. Whoever said that to me, that was really good. Sometimes I'm like all business and I don't really think about to the level I could, asking someone how they're really doing over the last year. And that's a good one for me. So whoever shared that, thank you for sharing that. Who's next? Everybody kind of share one. What's your big one?
I think the umbrella is the high performing team, right? So everything, all these are bits and pieces to say, how do you get maximum leverage, maximum return, maximum teaming, retention, everything else around being a great high performing team.
Thanks, buddy. Who's next?
Maybe not to be afraid to bring up that correction of errors term and see how people respond to that. You know, I thought about when I was 8 years old learning how to play baseball. I mean, I was very much, back up the first baseman. And I didn't think that's what you do when you play ball, right? And sometimes with the fundamentals, we're missing it. And I think maybe there are people out there that really yearn for some of those fundamentals, and you don't know it unless you point it out in a nice way. But you also have to say, listen, if I slip up, I want you to correct me as well.
Exactly. Yeah, tell you what, you know how many times, Rick, I've finished a meeting and I've looked at my team, whether it's a speech, Randy, including the first time you and I met at HP, and there was 900 people in the room. And I asked my team, how could I be better? What's my correction of errors? What could we done better? Like I've done that for 20 something years, you know, it's like a powerful deal, Rick, when you ask that to yourself and your team. Mm-hmm. What did I not see? How could I have been better? Did I talk too much? Did I listen enough? Was I passionate enough? Was I too passionate? Did I cut people off? You know, all those little nuances, right? I can remember one time I asked that, and I was in a stadium giving a talk, and I had 6 IMAGs, and people said you kept biting, you're kind of not heavily biting, but I put my finger in my mouth, and I wasn't thinking about it. But when you're on 6 IMAG screens, it's like, that's pretty dumb. I'm like, okay, got it, you know? All right, who's next? Thanks, Rick. Sean, what are you taking away, buddy?
I like the team synergy piece, and just like really making sure that you have like an open-ended collective environment, even through Zoom, especially when it can give them, you're allowing them to come to the table to support, you know, their intelligence for what they're giving to the organization, and promoting, you know, their own employee engagement, where we're trying to find where all the assets are in our company and how we can actually overutilize them, even in this difficult environment. So I'm taking away that.
Thanks, Sean.
I would say with communication,
Who's this? Hey, yes, go for it.
Sorry, Kristen. I would say with communication, I always try to highlight, successes in our group meetings, but also create a sense of comfort for them to talk about problems or struggles or obstacles they encountered and work together to talk through how we can adjust what they did or share best practices to help the person so they're more comfortable communicating that. So not necessarily highlighting an error, but as a team working on it together.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hey, Tony, this is the one who, I love that strength card exercise. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I commit to that. That's a great idea. And the standards piece is interesting too. I think we've kind of talked about that a few times, that we need to create a set of standards in our team to make sure communications are being done as expected. So those are the two things I'm going to go for.
Thanks, Anu. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to share one?
This is Joel. I'm with Anu there. The standards of communication, that really hit home. We got guys that in a sales update in Salesforce or whatever tool you're using, we write 2 paragraphs, and other guys that write 2 words, right? And so what we always have standards for meetings and presentations and QBRs. We have tons of standards, but one for communicating, especially in this day and age when communication isn't quite as tight as it usually can be based on what we live in. I think that's a great just to put together a team standard of communication. That's what I'm going to take.
Thank you. Gonna go one more. We're about at the top of the hour. Anybody else? If not, Randy, you want to give us a close?
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for attending. We have another slide, I think, to talk about our next one. Eloise or Tony? Here we go.
Just a second. Ready? Here we go.
Game is always changing. Tony, you want to do a commercial for that?
Yeah, I invested the last year working with the former CEO of a company called First Command. He built the company to $20 billion. Former Air Force pilot, 114 missions, incredible man, 73 years old, connected with me last year and said, hey, I want to do a book. And right in the middle of COVID, we said things are always changing. Well, they're always changing. And so he and I have put together some real great kernels that I can't wait to share with you about. The game is always changing. So look forward to that. Join us. Tell everybody.
Excellent. And you can see the schedule on out, and hopefully everybody has a kind of automatic schedule on this. And then for sales community, things continue to go and grow, and several of you are already members and part of it. Some of you, if you're not, feel free to join and spread the word, please. We still have our 30-day free trial, so anybody can go to salescommunity.com for that. I just got approved for LinkedIn Live last week, so now we have our every Wednesday Tech Sales Insights, and tomorrow we're going to be featuring Ed Sim, who's with Bold Start Ventures, who is an early investor, board member, companies like SNCC, Security Scorecard, several others, and that should be great. And he's going to actually be joining us from Jackson Hole at 2 p.m. East. So that'll be a LinkedIn Live, AMA, Ask Me Anything. So definitely look forward to that. And we have a pre-recorded podcast that'll be released in the morning. And for several of these topics that come up, I try not to kind of wave the flag, advertise too much, but there really is a lot of great content that is on Sales Community. If you want to go in and search by topic, like we talked some today about remote selling. If you want to put in LinkedIn, a whole bunch of kind of best practices come up there. One that got a lot of hits the past week is in talking about Sales Navigator. So if you go to the site and put in LinkedIn, the one about Sales Navigator, should pop up. I think a lot of people probably have it, but don't do as good a job as they need to do in terms of leveraging it. And that's whether you're individual contributor, SDR out of college, all the way up to a CRO. So anyway, lots of you have been supportive